Alright guys, so we are here. We're going to replace the front brake pads on the Kia Optima. So I have the wheels chocked. I have the front right tire off. And to take these rotors off, you're going to need one of these impact drivers. You put this to these Phillips head screws that are holding the rotor on, and then you just give it a couple taps until it loosens up. There you go. And there you have it. Now don't lose these guys because you'll need to put them back on when you put the new rotors in. Okay, and now I'm going to remove the caliper, and that'll give me access to the brake pads. Alright, so one thing that I like to do is I'll get one of these cement mixing tubs and I put it under the assembly, and then I spray it with these brake parts cleaner, and I like to do that to get the brake dust off, because you don't want to be inhaling that when it starts floating around in the air. That does produce cancer. So I'll take this brake and parts cleaner and just spray it down and let all that loose dust just fall into the tub. Alright, and you want to obviously do this in a well ventilated area, because you know, these fumes will affect your breathing and get you a little dizzy. Alright, so next we move on to the two bolts that are holding the caliper onto the front here, and we'll take a 14mm wrench. Here's one. Here's the other guy. And then now you remove the caliper. And here it is here. So I'll just let this sit up here for now. And you don't want this to hang just on the brake hose, because you can damage the brake hose. So what I like to do is I'll get a zip tie and zip tie this caliper to the front strut, and that'll keep the caliper out of the way and weight off of the brake hose. Okay, now you can remove the brake pads. And as you can see, these are fairly worn out. And now the rear has this little metal piece there. We'll put that aside. and I'll show you the comparison between the new brake pads. So here we have the new Hart brake pads. And you can see, I'll bring the camera up closer so that you could really get a good look at this. But you can see the difference. You can really see here the difference between and the brand new ones. And this metal piece here that you see is what lets you know when it's time to change the brake pads. Once that starts scraping on the rotor, you'll get that squeaking noise, and that's when you know it's time to change those brake pads. Alright, now in order to remove the rotor, I have to take off this bracket that holds the caliper, so I will do that now. Okay, now to get to the two bolts that are holding this bracket, we're going to need a socket because the 17mm wrench won't fit in there. So you could use a socket with a breaker bar because it's pretty tight. And what I've also done is I've turned the steering wheel all the way to the left to give me some more room to work with over here. And once you've loosened them up, you can switch to a ratchet and continue removing the bolts. There's one bolt. And I'm just using the open end side of this since this side does fit, and it's a little difficult for this socket along with this ratchet to fit. So I'll just use this open end wrench and continue to remove the bolt. And there you have it. Second bolt and this is your bracket. So you want to keep these pieces in case the new brakes do not come with this, because you'll definitely need those for the new brakes. And now we should be able to remove the rotor now that this bracket is off. Couple taps and they come right off. Now let's compare these rotors. To the new Hart rotors with the drilled and slotted face. And I'm really looking forward to testing these guys out because they are meant to keep the rotor cool enough so you don't overheat the brake pads, and it should improve braking and also reduce the brake dust that you see on the rims. So looking forward to seeing how that works out. So we'll put these new rotors on and make sure to align the screw holes for the Phillips screws. And there you have it. Take this glove off and just tighten up these screws that hold the rotor in place. And you just want to hand tighten them on there, and then we can continue putting the bracket back on. Now I gotta look up what the spec is of how many foot-pounds of torque to put on these bolts. But just for the purpose of this video, I'll skip through that. But when you guys out there, or gals, go to put on your brakes, please make sure to torque these bolts to the manufacturer's recommended specification. Once I'm done here, I will look it up and I will post it on the video. But for now, I'll just use my breaker bar to tighten it up. Okay, and then now we'll put on these brake rotors. Brake pads. Now let me show you guys how these go in. Now, a good thing to practice while you're in here is to take a look at these control arms. Make sure they're not ripped and the grease is gushing out. Also the CV axles, make sure they're not ripped. You know, just take a look around, make sure everything looks how it should. But these brake pads, you know, pretty easy to install. And so far I'm liking this Hart Brakes kit. I got these off of Amazon. And I'm pretty glad and content with how they're fitting so far. So far, no issues. There you go. And we cannot forget this little, I don't know, this is like a noise cap or something. But we'll definitely want to put that back on there. Alright. And you want to take the caliper that's hanging out over here. Now, this caliper is pretty much fully extended because these brake pads were worn out. So what I'll do is I'll take an old brake pad, I'll place it on here, and I'll compress this brake piston with a C-clamp. Now they do sell the proper tools to compress these brake pistons, but I don't happen to have one. And I'm comfortable using this C-clamp instead of going out and purchasing these tools. I'm not a professional mechanic, but like many of you out there, I am a car enthusiast and I like to do things on my own. So with the brake piston fully compressed, it's now easy to put the caliper back on the brake pads. Bolts. And again, I'll look up what the recommended torque specs for these tightening these bolts are, and I will list them on the video. $14mm. And there you have it, folks. The Hart rotors and Hart brake pads for Kia Optima. And that's pretty much it. I will do the other side, which is exactly identical to this side, so there's no need to videotape that, but I will keep you guys posted on how I like them, if it does cut down on brake dust. And I'll be doing the rear in another video, and I will also let you guys know how that goes. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching. And if you guys have any questions, just let me know.